What's up, everybody? Today, I'm going to give you my top 10 predictions for the 2019 Classic Physique Olympia. Let's get started. Hey everybody, so I'm going to do things a little bit different for my Classic Physique video. I'm going to give you my top 10. I'm going to start with 10th place and work my way down to first. So let's get started. In the 10th spot, I'm going to go with Abner Logan. Now, he's new this year. This is his first Olympia. This is rookie year, but he showed really good shape and structure at Tampa, and I think it's going to be enough to land him inside the top 10. 9th place is going to go to Alex Cambronero. I have Alex here because he's a former 212 guy, which means he's going to have plenty of mass. He always showed up in good condition before, and he has really good shape. So I think that Classic is a good fit for him, and I think he's going to land in the 9th spot. In 8th, I have Stan DeLongu. Now, Stan is definitely a top 10 Olympia competitor, and he's made tremendous progress over the last couple years. And some people could argue that he could place higher, and I agree with you. When I place my top 10, I put him here, but I think he's really going to battle with this next guy that I have in 7th, Danny Yunin. I think that Danny and Stan are really going to go back and forth and fight possibly for the top 5, but in my predictions, I have Danny falling in 7th and Stan falling in 8th. In the 6th spot, I have Arash Jabbar. Now, Arash has placed higher in the past, and he very well could this year as well. I'm placing him here just because it's my predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him inside the top 5, as he's done so the last couple years. Arash has a great physique. He comes in crazy condition, and when he nails it, he's very dangerous and could even be a threat to the Olympia title. But based on what I'm seeing with the other guys and what's happened in the past, I think he's going to be fighting to make the top 5. He very well could do it. I'm actually pulling for him. I'm a fan of Arash. But for my prediction, I have him in 6th place. In 5th place, I have Henry Pierre Eno. And again, this whole top 5, people are going to be probably screaming at me and disagreeing with me because we all have our own opinions. Now, any one of these top 5, top 6 guys could really mix things up and jump around. As I said earlier, that Arash could be he could potentially win the show. The same thing goes for the entire top 5. Now, Henry, I have him in 5th place. He's a taller guy. He's very big. He's got a crazy taper, tiny waist, and he comes in great condition. So that's definitely enough to land him inside the top 5. For him to place higher, though, I think my top 4 are going to have to screw up in some way. Now, this next guy, the 4th place guy, I'm kind of going out on a limb here, and I'm going to put Keon Pearson in 4th place. Now, you could argue that Henry could place higher than him. I mean, we're kind of looking at apples to oranges here because Henry is a very tall, kind of more X-frame guy. And Keon, I mean, in my opinion, though, when you look at his pictures, you look at his physique, it doesn't get much more classic than that. So Henry being a taller guy, Keon is also probably the shortest one in the lineup. So you can't really compare those two, or it's very difficult. So I think it's really going to depend on what the judges are looking for that day, or who shows up in what condition, or how they get called out in the comparisons. And it's what makes this show exciting, though, because when you have a physique like Keon's compared to a physique like Henry's, or the rest of the guys that I'm going to mention in my top 5, we have several different physiques ranging from high to tall to short to more bodybuilder mass to more shape to more symmetry. So it's definitely going to be interesting. All right, now that we're going to get into the top 3, I want to preface by saying that I'm sure any one of the top 5 could potentially win the show. Like I said before, probably the top 6 could win the show. So don't think that I'm being concrete in my predictions here, and because you disagree. In 3rd place, I have George Peterson. My reasoning for this is because out of my guys in the top 3, he's the most bodybuilder, and this is classic physique. And it pains me to say that because I don't necessarily think that it's a right thing, but it is what it is. George has more mass, and he looks more like a 212 bodybuilder than the rest of the guys. The rest of the guys have a little bit more aesthetics than he does. Now, that said, George is going to be shredded. He's going to have a ton of muscle. He's probably going to have the best back on the stage. He poses well. I can't knock the guy. I think he's going to be 3rd simply because I don't think that he has the aesthetics. Let me rephrase that. I don't think that his strengths are going to outweigh the weakness, and that he's not as pretty as the top 2. And that's why I think he's going to land in 3rd. Now, in 2nd place, I'm kind of biased because now we're getting close to my guy, which is Breon. But in second place, I have Bumstead again, and I'm going to try and be as objective as possible. I don't think that Chris Bumstead has the biceps or the back to really hang and dominate the top 5. So I think that he could really fall anywhere in there, but I'm going to go ahead and place him second. Now, before you guys jump at me and say, oh, you're just dissing him because he's bringing on competition, that's not true. Bumstead's strengths, his height and his structure, and certain shots of his are lethal. You know, the vacuum, his side chest is really good as well. He's a very photogenic guy, and he looks good in a lot of poses, and he moves well. So he's definitely a threat. I'm not saying that he can't beat Breon, okay? What I am saying is that I can point out weaknesses, and I think that a lot of people can too. If he was able to have more peak to his biceps, I don't know if it's his fault. It could be a genetic thing, right? But in classic, you look at all the classic physiques of the past, biceps are a big deal. You know, Arnold started that, right? That's what was his claim to fame, was biceps and chest. Now, Bumstead's chest is phenomenal, but his biceps leave something to be desired. And when he turns around, I'm not saying his back isn't good, but it's not great. And if you look at the rest of the guys in the top 5, top 6, hell, top 10, but especially in the top 3, the backs are going to catapult them above the rest to a degree, right? Now, Peterson, because of his mass and conditioning, Breon arguably has more detail than anybody else on the stage. So I think that, you know, if you look at a pose like back double bicep, if Bumstead is weak in the back and the biceps, that's a weak shot for him. And that's what's going to make it hard for him to beat Breon. It's also going to make it hard for him to hold off George. But like I said, Bumstead, you know, his vacuum poses, his side chest, and some of his other poses, he looks phenomenal. And this division is based on aesthetics and a certain look. So overall development or completeness sometimes can take a second place to just aesthetics and looking a certain way. And if that's the case, you know, Bumstead is lethal. But if they're looking for completeness, he's missing a few body parts that he needs to bring up before I could honestly say he's a shoo-in for the win. Now, finishing in first place, I'm going to have Breon again. And I know that I'm biased because I'm his guru or whatever. I'm his coach. But I'm going to give you my reasons why. Breon is probably the most balanced and complete guy on the stage. And he's going to show up in some of, if not the best condition on the stage as well. Aside from that, even if you disagree there, I can tell you this. I'm predicting that this is Breon's best look. We made improvements this year. He's going to show up better than he ever has been. So, if it's true in Classic, like it is the other divisions, that you have to knock out the champ to win, then it's going to be very hard for somebody else who's been placing behind Breon the last couple of years to knock him out if Breon continues to get better. So, what happens? What are Breon's weaknesses? What has to happen to him to not win this year? The weaknesses that we addressed over the offseason, really the last couple of years, have been giving Breon more chest density, especially in the upper chest. In his front double bicep, we wanted it to pop more. We didn't want it to flatten out. And same thing with his mid-back. We wanted more density back there. And it's something that I worked on. It's something that Chris Cormier worked with him on as well. And I think it's something that we're going to bring this year that we haven't had 100% the last couple of years. Aside from that, you can't really knock any body parts of Breon. And that's why he's the champion, because he's that complete. So I think that we're going to have to screw up somewhere in peak week. We're going to have to show up flat or soft. Well, excuse me, he won't be soft. He's shredded to the bone right now. We're going to have to show up flat or spill over to leave the door open for somebody else to take him out. So, aside from that, any one of the top 6, though, if they really bring it, could beat him. You know, he's very dominant right now. He's definitely the favorite to win. But he's not untouchable. Nobody's ever untouchable. And with talent as deep as this, anything could really happen. So, to recap, I have Breon winning. I have Bumstead coming in second again because I think he needs to bring up his back and biceps before he can really challenge for the crown. I have Peterson finishing in third simply because he's more bodybuilder, not quite as aesthetic as Bumstead. I have Henry Pierre Arnault I have Keon Pearson finishing in fourth, and I'm going to say he jumps up there because of his aesthetics and balance, and he seems to bring really good conditioning as well. I have Henry Pierre Arnault in fifth, and he's up there because of his mass and his shape He's going to bring conditioning as well. Another kind of more bodybuilding guy, but an aesthetic bodybuilder. And in 6th place, I have Arash Rabar. And Arash, very, very complete, very balanced, very conditioned. Any one of these guys screws up, he's going to jump back into that top 5, possibly even top 3, even win the show. But I think the other guys are going to have to screw up for Arash to jump up in there. So anyways, that's my predictions for this year. And this was probably the hardest predictions I've ever had to make. You know, I'm really excited about the growth that this division has had over the last couple years. My last show was in 2016, and it was a Classic Physique show when the division first started. And I think back then a lot of people were wondering what it was going to be in the future. Now in the last couple years, it's undergone a lot of refinements, meaning they've changed the trunks back to a more classic bodybuilding trunk. They've modified the height and the weight requirements a little bit. And I think what we've ended up with is really a classic bodybuilding division that a lot of people have wanted. I mean, if you look at the depth of the talent in this division, you know, how can you not be excited about it? So anyways, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, and until next time, you're tuned in to BodyGeeks.